Happy Sunday, everyone. Yesterday, I talked a lot about the 4 factors of the physiological stress response. And so in other words, that's a way to try to prevent and preempt any sort of harmful effects from pathological stress for both yourself and your dog. Now, today I'm going to be talking about another issue. Maybe we weren't able to prevent it. Maybe we could not preempt any sort of condition, debilitating condition that's occurring because the stressors were too high, too often, or a one-time very traumatic event. Also, we're going to talk a little bit about genetics. Genetics never tells us what will happen. She simply tells us what can happen from a behavioral standpoint. In other words, some animals and some humans are just predisposed. For example, they have variations of gene Z that, for whatever reason, become excited under any sort of particular stimulus. How many people do you know seem perfectly fine and perfectly normal till you shove them in a closet? Then they're not. There's a lot of phobias, a lot of little issues that all humans tend to have at some degree or another. But today I'm going to focus mostly on the dogs that you have, and you'll find that there'll be a lot of similarities between your dogs and even human beings. Okay, I do a lot of what's called canine pharmacotherapy. I meet on a daily basis people who own dogs that are immune to training. Yeah, you bet. They tried training, but it didn't work. I write several blogs on our website, one called Sweet Elsie. This was a dog who suffered from the worst case of storm phobia I've ever seen. For many years, anytime a thunderstorm would erupt around the house, she would just completely panic. Now, there's a difference between being concerned and being fearful and then being panicked, and I'll explain that here in a second. For many years, they tried training, stay, don't worry about it, it's going to be fine. That didn't work. They tried some nutraceuticals, they tried a thunder shirt. None of that worked. And so finally, they just simply became enablers. And they left a closet door open that was in their hallway because it seemed like that's where the dog always wanted to go when there was a thunderstorm. So they just left it open. And this went on for years and years. And then one weekend, their son came home from college and they asked the son, hey, tell you what, seeing how you're here, we're going to go out of town and take advantage of the fact that you're here. Do us a favor. Be good, watch the house, make sure that darn door in the hallway doesn't get closed, and keep an eye on Elsie. Well, unfortunately, he didn't do any of those. He went out with his buddies. He was out till wee hours of the morning one night. The closet door had been closed for whatever reason. Somehow or another, it became closed. He doesn't remember. But a violent thunderstorm rolled through the area, and there goes Elsie, straight down the hallway in the pitch dark. And she rammed into that closed door, not expecting it to be closed, and broke the frontal bone in her skull. Well, that didn't stop her. She kept ramming the door over and over and over again, breaking 3 more bones in the zygomatic area of her cheek. And when that finally failed, she then turned to the sheetrock next to the door and tore through it until she was finally inside with 3 additional broken teeth and 67 sutures that would be needed. But by golly, Elsie was in the closet. Because see, for years it had been that closet, that very closet that had made thunderstorms go away. Now, the sad part about that, talk about mental illnesses among dogs. There were 3 other closet doors wide open in that house. Beds that she could have crawled under. Bathtubs she could have dived into. There were other places Elsie could have gone, but for Elsie, it was that closet. And so she made it into that closet. And of course, the thunderstorm went away. The issue that I was facing when I treated this dog was the fact that it was going to continue going to that closet for the rest of its life. It was going to continue to have panic every time a thunderstorm rolled away. And many times I tell people, when you are dealing with situations like, for example, if you're claustrophobic, I would just advise if you can avoid tight spaces, then you're going to be perfectly fine. But you couldn't avoid the thunderstorms. Where they lived, they happened. And so that being said, we had to intervene in her condition, and we actually had to use some chemicals to lower her stress response, to disrupt the panic, to turn her from a completely panicking animal into one that was simply concerned. And then when we were able to do that, we were able to say, stay. Stay. You're not going to the closet. That's not an option available for you any longer. So now all of a sudden, conventional training worked. And it took about 6 months, and finally Elsie never went to a closet again after that. Was she concerned when thunderstorms rolled in? You bet she was. But however, did she panic? No, she didn't. And she didn't run to the closet. No one had to worry about a closet door ever being closed again. So that's a little bit about what I'm talking about. And here's how that thing kind of develops. So again, many of these dogs, if you ever have a dog like Elsie, there is no doubt there is a genetic condition. There is. We always say in neurobiology, genetics by environment. So the environment was a frightening thunderstorm and also the enabling dog owners and also the failed the response of other people to recognize the condition that the dog had. There was just many factors that were involved. But however, many dogs, I own dogs, and none of them freak out during a thunderstorm. Again, I'm also not afraid of tight spaces, but there's some other conditions that I might be a little bit more worried about. Welcome to being an individual on the planet Earth. And every dog that's out there is an individual, and we have to keep that in mind. It may be a particular breed, it may be a certain age or what have you, but it doesn't matter. Every dog on this planet is an individual dog. And we have to take every individual dog's condition into consideration anytime for their sake, for their higher quality of life and for safety for everyone involved. All right, so I already discussed that G by E. So let's say that's happened. Here's what can happen to a dog like that. And even to your own dog, even if you don't suspect that your dog has a psychiatric disorder of any sort. It doesn't matter. So I'm going to borrow you as an example because I find that when I relate to humans, then they can relate to their dogs. Okay, so I'm going to use you as a human. Those of you that are married, especially right now, we've been contained in our homes a lot. We're like prisoners in our homes right now. So you've probably been binging a lot on Netflix and Amazon Prime and a few other things. Let's say about 10 o'clock at night. It's dark outside. You and the wife are binging on Netflix. You're down here in your calm zone. Because see, I drew a little graph here. We humans and dogs have 3 basic emotional states. Now, guys, it gets a whole lot deeper than that, but I'm trying to keep a simple, stupid rule again here today. Trying to be really brief on this. So I'm just going to call it the calm zone, the arousal zone, and then this right up here is the reactive/panic zone. All right, so you in the house, or you and the wife are in the house watching Netflix, 10 o'clock at night, it's all quiet, then all of a sudden, boom, you hear what you suspect is your back door being kicked in. All right, if you're not used to your back door being kicked in, then you will immediately depart the calm zone. Your physiological stress response will be immediately mobilized. Glucose running through your system, like I described yesterday, an increased heart rate, oxygen, eyes dilated, cognition is enhanced. All the way up to about right here, as you start climbing, going up, 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 up. It's actually not bad. That was that good part of stress. Enhanced cognition. You're going to jump up off the sofa and go, what was that? Did you hear that? Did someone kick our door in? Well, if they did, what are we going to do? Are we going to dial 911? What did I do last time? How do I get away from this situation? Your brain's going to be going 1,000 miles an hour. Your eyes will be dilated so you can even see better. Your senses, you'll be able to hear someone even open up a soda pop 100 yards away. You're going to have incredible ability to deal with the situation. You're ready. Fight or flight, here it comes. Good news, bad news, I'm ready. So you're climbing. Okay, so Albert, you go down the hallway, and sure enough, it was someone who kicked your back door in. Maybe it's like, if you guys remember back in the 1980s, like that movie Freddy Krueger. So somebody's coming down your hallway, looks like some sort of ghoul with a big old butcher knife. Well, I'm telling you what, unless you've had previous training on dealing with a situation like that, you will probably continue going up your arousal column until you hit this thing called the reactive panic column. Now, just before you get to that, especially if you're a dog, we humans do have one thing in our favor before we get to that. We have the ability to be aware of our situation, think about the past, think about the future, draw on training, and just really from a reasonable standpoint, kind of just diagnose, or what I should say, use the proper term, dissect it. Trying to think of the old biology term there. Dissect the situation and come up with a rational explanation of what's going on. But needless to say, if that is not rational, you do have someone that's about to attack you. If you go past this line here, this one I drew up here with an arrow on it right here, it's over for you as far as a conscious thought. This is where we're going to fall back as Mother Nature and as your brain on any training you've had, any sort of instinct that you have. This is where you're going to flail, grab, fight for your life, and yet the vast majority of you, including your dog, will never have a conscious memory of that part of that situation. Many times people have an accident, they hit the back of a car or the front of a car, and they remember slamming on the brakes. Some of them even remember the flash of the airbag, and that's it. A couple of days later, people are asking, going, wow, man, that was a bad accident you were in. So what'd you think about it? And you know, what happened? And you'll go, I don't have a clue. And they'll go, what do you mean you didn't have a clue? You're conscious the whole time. First responders ask you things, checking out your brain and making sure what kind of injuries you might have. And you're talking to everyone. In fact, you're talking to me in the emergency room. You don't remember it? And they don't. They don't. I don't know if any of you have ever been through an experience like that. You black out. Even people at a lesser level, you watch some of these talent shows and they'll tell you, man, all I remember was the chair turning for me. I sure hope I sounded good. Hope I looked good on the stage. They don't remember because their stress response went past a threshold in which the brain will shut off your conscious thought, rely on what's called procedural or implicit memory. All those habits, all those things that you've done in the past to survive. Because see, it will never, if you do survive, it'll never forget that. It parks whatever happened that allowed you to survive that event at a molecular level. Molecular. Meaning you won't have a conscious memory of it, but if you get in that situation again, your brain will immediately fall back on whatever it is that you did. Okay, and then one last thing on this. The higher the event, so I wrote up here intensity of the stressor, and I wrote down here duration of the stressor. If, let's say, your dog is the one that encounters the guy coming down the hallway with a butcher knife and the guy down the hallway attacks the dog. If this was a level 10 event for your dog, even for you, let's say you don't go past that point where you black out. You're very conscious of the whole event. Even for you, there's what's called decay, meaning you coming back to your baseline. Now that can take anything from seconds to minutes to hours, weeks, months, years for someone with PTSD. Same thing for your dog. But here's the bad part about that. While you're coming down to your calm zone, until you do get down here, a level 1 event occurs during that time while you're spiraling down. It can send you straight back to the top again. So let me use another example. How many of you had someone sneak up on you and go, boo, and you jump about 10 feet in the air? Well, you notice right after that, all of a sudden, bing, the least little thing, they even walk by you, go into another room, whatever, and even touch you, and you go, whoa, oh, geez, wait a minute. You know, we see it all the time with people going through fright houses. I love those darn things. But I remember when we went through one time, I went through it with Kira. She doesn't like to be scared. You know, she watches a scary movie like this. You know, maybe one of those slip between her fingers or covers her eyes. You know, I think they're pretty darn funny. So we go through this fright house, and about the first 10 feet into it, this mummy jumps out of nowhere and goes, rawr, and grabs Kira. That was it. Kira went straight up to here. Ah, it's all bad. Then after the mummy disappears into the dark, we keep going. We couldn't go out. There's people behind us, so she's kind of stuck. She had to go through the darn thing. Well, 20 feet later, probably by design, all there was a puff of air. Psst, that's it. Psst, that was it. Just a little puff of air from a tube. That would have probably been a level 1 or a level 2. Because Kara entered the darn thing like sitting in her arousal column already. But still, it would have been like a 1 or 2. But because it came after the mummy who had jumped out, there she goes. Back up again. And it continued like that all the way through. And to this day, we still talk about that. She can remember everything. She never did go so far as she blacked out, thank goodness. I didn't have to carry out the darn thing. But again, that's just an example, a funny example of a very serious thing that can happen. From your dog's point of view, and from your point of view as a dog owner, typically when animals go up to this level here, if they used aggression to solve their situation, it is guaranteed that they will use it again. Guaranteed. Listen to those words. If they used avoidance, like Elsie, the closet, guaranteed they will use it again. They will. This is called survival. So that being said, if you ever have a dog in which it is doing something undesired, like running to a closet, attacking people, you need to try to either A, the only choice you'll have is way over here, I wrote on the board, either avoid the provocative event or the stimulus. Avoid it if you can. But again, like in Elsie's case, no, it didn't work. There's thunderstorms all the time. But if someone's kicking in your back door all the time, get a better back door, get a better lock on it, what have you. Anytime you can avoid the situation that causes your dog to go this high up in this column, the better. But when it's unavoidable, because maybe it's just unfamiliar people, maybe it's because it's just unfamiliar dogs, or a combination thereof. Maybe it's just children. Maybe it's just guys. Maybe it's guys with coats on, guys with long hair, wearing checkered shirts. Whatever it is, if you can avoid it, it's great. But if you can't, because of your lifestyle, whatever, then you will have to intervene. Otherwise, this will continue over and over again. And in today's world, that looks a lot like this. Okay, when you can't avoid it because it is an unfamiliar person, geez, someone just delivered a package, and who just came over, and this and that, and boom, 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 boom. All between all of these spikes here, we have what's called glucocorticoids. And you know what those things do? I'm not going to even go into that thing too far. Let me just put you this way. It's been proven that they attach themselves to your hippocampus. They can actually cause brain neuron damage. Dendrites can shrivel up. Axon terminals shrivel up. Vast acres of neurons can die from a high plasma saturation level of glucocorticoids. The hippocampus, the part of your brain, think of it like a keyboard on a computer. It puts information into the cortex, brings it out of the cortex. 40% volume loss we're seeing with some veterans who suffer from PTSD. So now that'd be like you looking down at your keyboard right now and you're missing 40% of your keys. How good is that thing going to work for you? And when your brain neurons cannot talk, when your brain cannot communicate properly, then there's zero chance it's going to be able in all situations to assimilate the information flowing into it and then process it and react to it the way that it should. So hence how we came up with the words like paranoid and depressed and suicidal and so on and so forth. It's a real physiological problem for some of these animals. So if you think that you have this, you've tried training did not work. You tried a couple of over-the-counter type things like thunder shirts or even CBD, cannabidiol, and things of that sort. And I'll be talking about cannabidiol in a future video here coming up, and even thunder shirts, all these things. Well, it may need the help of chemicals that are stronger, like an antidepressant or benzodiazepine or an agonist or antagonist, you name it. There are many chemicals that can actually trap the animal where it can't get past this point right here. And that's that concern point. That's the point where the animal goes, you know, I'm really not liking this, but what do we need to do? And when you can do that, you can step in and go, I'll tell you what, one thing you don't need to do, you don't need to bite them. And you also don't need to run to that closet. That's when they're receptive to the conventional training. That's when they will. That's when you deactivate those undesired behaviors. That's where you do counter conditioning. It's where you teach them, hey, here's a better way to deal with that. But if you've got an animal who is going to here and going there almost on a daily basis, you will have to intervene. And you will have to do that from a chemical standpoint unless you can just completely avoid it. Completely avoid it. So guys, I just want to talk to you a little bit about that day. I know that was a little bit brief. This goes way deep. So I'm going to try and make sure I cover a lot of videos that talk about this because this is vitally important. I've been doing pharmacotherapy now for almost 30 plus years. And I'm here to tell you, I own a vet hospital and everything. It's gotten much, much worse. We're seeing a climb in it. We really are. I've seen on both a personal level, professional level, we are having animals that are being born, unfortunately, we all have the biology to deal with mild to moderate stressors that are transient. Because again, if you're an elk, you're not supposed to be attacked by a wolf every day. And it's supposed to get over with in a hurry. But these traumatic things that happen over and over and over and over again, no one was given the biology to deal with that. Yeah, some of us are better than others, but no one was given the biology to deal with that constantly. And unfortunately, a lot of our dogs are. And they can't talk their way out of a situation. They can't. One last little story, so you wrap your head around this. I had a client come visit me years and years ago. He was missing his right ear. He had a lot of scar tissue. He just brought his dog in to me to just have some obedience training. But he was a veteran of many tours in Afghanistan and Iraq, and that's where the wound came from. And while I'm having my meeting with him, another training session was going to occur, and one of my trainers passed through my room with her clients in tow. And the guy part of the couple was wearing a beanie, because it's wintertime, had a black shaggy beard, it was dark complexion on his skin. My client went straight to there. Straight to there. And I realized because of what I do, what was occurring. He was having an episode. For him at that moment, that man that walked through the room was the Taliban. And he was there. But because he's a human, he had the ability to give himself his own feedback and say, hey, I'm not in Afghanistan. That is not the Taliban. I'm here training with Bryan. And within several minutes, he was able to come back down close to his baseline, and our lesson continued. Your dog can't do that. They don't have that ability. A threatening thing, a fearful thing, a dangerous thing is going to remain that very thing until you step in, intervene, and teach it elsewise. Teach it differently. It's just going to remain the same thing. So I wanted to point this out because a lot of people don't even realize that this is happening. They don't realize that we have animals leaving their calm zones and going to the arousal zone and all the way up here in this panic reactive zone. And by the way, over a period of time, if this happens a lot, say goodbye to my calm zone, because now we're going to reset and you're going to have a very tiny calm zone because this animal will spend most of its days in the arousal zone. And this will grow as well. Your reactive zone will now actually grow. And so this is an animal spends most of his time in the arousal zone or the reactive zone. Noted by hypervigilance, panting, dilated eyes. In other words, an animal who acts very fearful when we humans are not able to discern any sort of viable threat. You know, humans who have conditions like this will often describe it as sand constantly shifting below my feet. Guys, it's a really, it's a horrible condition. And if you even suspect that you have that, please reach out to me, Bryan with a Y at tamingthewild.com. I treat thousands of dogs. I treat a lot of them virtually over a computer. I don't have to touch them. Some of them are so fearful of humans. If I try to touch them, I'm going to draw back a stub. So this can be treated. This can be helped. And I'm also working on a new book that will address this issue here. So hopefully that'll come out here within the next year, and I'll have a lot more detailed information on it. Okay, so that was just part 2 of a 2-day series, the 4 factors of the stress response. And if you can't get that thing done, and we have an animal either by genetics or by events, environment, creates this condition here, we have to do something. We have to step in and intervene if we can't avoid. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed the rest of your Sunday. I hope you're safe out there. Tomorrow, I'm going to start another 2-part series, but this is going to be training. I'm going to break the dogs out. I'm going to teach you how to train this really cool command called place, where animals are taught to get on a cot, get on a bed, get on a mat, you name it, and remain there for hours. Telling you what, I have to have that in my own personal life. And I think you're going to add it to your relationship with your dog. As always, if you found this beneficial, please share it. Please share it with someone that you think might could use this information. And I'll see you guys tomorrow.